To round or not to round, that is the question. Age-old debate amongst yoga teachers, yoga practitioners, and different styles of yoga. To round our back or to not round our back in a forward bend. Which is correct? So often, depending on what style of yoga you've been taught, you may have been really taught to keep your back very flat when you're doing forward bends, or you may have been taught to let it round in forward bends, or you may have not been given any instructions on your back whatsoever in a forward bend. So which is the correct answer? This is what we all want to know. Which is the right way? Should we round our back? Is that the right way? Should we keep a flat back? Is that the right way? Yes. To both. Let me explain. If your intention in a forward bend is to get a strong stretch in the hamstrings, okay, and to create awareness of your posture, maybe to strengthen the muscles of your back, to open the chest and the heart, then keeping a flat back would be the correct answer. However, if you're practicing your forward bends to stretch the muscles of your back, to expand and traction out your spine on your back body, right, to create space between those vertebrae, then it would be more correct to let your back round. So depending on your intention in a forward bend, your forward bends might look completely different. So when I first took my yoga teacher training, my style of yoga was very, very focused on alignment. I'm going to say in quotations because I don't think there is one pattern of alignment that fits everybody. That was the focus of that style of yoga. And we were always taught flat back, flat back, flat back, flat back, right? Which is, again, really good and beneficial in stretching the hamstrings, creating postural awareness, opening the chest, strengthening the muscles of the back, right? It's super helpful for those things. But if I have sequenced my forward bend in a sequence as, say, for example, a counter pose to a back bend, right? Or if I have sequenced it in my sequence because I really need to stretch my back, then I would be much better served in a rounded back forward bend, okay? So you have to know when you're practicing on your own, what is my intention for putting this forward bend here? Do I want to create postural awareness, strength, and do I really want to stretch my hamstrings, the backs of my thighs? Or am I doing this because I really want to stretch the muscles of my back, because I want to traction out the backside of my vertebrae and stretch the vertebrae apart a little bit so that the discs have more room on the backside of my body and maybe get rid of some tension in the muscles of my back. And so how we approach our forward bends will depend on what our answer to that question is. Okay? And if you're studying regularly with a yoga teacher, they're probably going to guide you while you're practicing on what they want from you. Okay? So if they don't say anything about your back at all, then I guess you get to choose. But if they're asking you to really flatten out your back, it's probably because either that's the way they've been trained and they never allow people to round their backs, or because for the goal of the pose and where it's sequenced, that's going to be the most fruitful. Okay? And so in my own classes, we do lots of our standing forward bends with a flat back, and then we do lots of our seated forward bends, sometimes with a rounded back. And so I use both flat back and rounded back, depending on what my intention in the pose is. Okay, so what does this look like in practice? So I'll just do one seated forward bend, right, just to show you kind of a little bit of the difference, and then you can practice along and see how it feels different in your body. So here's a great pose as an example. So Danu is called in Hatha Yoga, or in our Yin Yoga they call it half butterfly. So I'm going to keep my right leg straight. I'm going to bring my left foot in. I'm going to line up the sole of my left foot with my inner thigh and let the knee come out to the side. Now if your knee here did not reach the floor, or your leg, if your calf, if your knee is up like this, you may want to put some support underneath here, because this can be really hard on the groin and also on the inner knee. Okay, but if your leg can rest on the floor, then you're okay here. Otherwise, tuck a block or a blanket or something underneath your knee. Now, if I'm trying to do this pose with a flat back, okay, so I'm going to bring my fingertips behind me, okay, so that I'm less likely to round my shoulders forward. So I'm going to bring my fingers behind me, they're going to point back, I'm going to roll my shoulders back, shoulder blades will come together, chin is parallel to the floor. Okay? Then I'm going to hinge from my hip crease and keep that length in my spine and the flatness in my back as I fold forward. This is going to give me a lot more work in the muscles of the back, right? So when I do this, shoulders rolling back, heart open, right? And I'm turning and I'm folding forward, I can feel the muscles of my back working. And I'm not going to be able to come as far forward before I feel a stretch through the back of the leg or so much work in the back that I'm sort of limited or stuck here. Now, if you're more flexible than I am, you may be able to come quite a ways forward while still keeping your back flat. But eventually, everyone's back will round if they get quite close to their leg here. Okay, so if I was trying to create postural awareness, big stretch in the hamstrings, strength in the back, and have an awareness of a nice tall spine, it would look like this. Okay, so right now I'm getting a stretch through the hamstring. You could even do the same with your hands forward. You just want to really make sure the shoulders are drawing back. For most of us, as soon as you bring the hands forward, we already start to round. Okay, so still thinking about being tall, right, and folding forward. So this is what it would look like with a flat back. And I'm going to feel a nice big stretch through the back of my leg. I'm going to feel the muscles of my back working. If, however, I want to approach this forward bend with a rounded spine, so maybe I'm not actually focusing as much on the stretch in the hamstring. I've done a whole bunch of back bends, and I want to actually counterpose now, so do the opposite of a back bend, then I need to let my back round so that my front of my body shortens, the back expands and stretches, and I get a stretch in my back. Okay, so the shape of the pose will change, but so will the focus. So if I fold forward and I let my back round, you can see, first of all, look how much more forward I'm able to go. Okay? I'm not actually feeling, for my body, much of a stretch in the hamstring, although you might be if you're tighter than me. But I am able to get a nice stretch through the back. I've let my shoulders soften inwards. I've let my hands become soft. My chin even draws in. Okay, so I'm basically just rounding forward and letting gravity have me. Okay, so there's just a quick demonstration of how rounding your back versus flattening your back can completely change the pose. So, round to round or not to round, that is the question. Well, it depends. What is your intention in the pose? Is your intention in the pose to strengthen your back, to create postural awareness, to open the chest, to stretch the hamstrings? If that's your answer, then flat back, right? If your intention in the pose is to stretch the muscles of your back, right, and to open up the back side of your spine and traction that out, or to counter pose after back bends, then a rounded spine will do that far more effectively. Sometimes I'll even practice a forward bend both ways. So in that pose, for example, I may come with a flat back first for the first few breaths, and then allow myself to round and soften, so I'm getting the best of both worlds. So for those of you that can't choose, that might be a great idea. Comments below. Do you prefer flat back, rounded back? Do you do both? Had you never considered maybe before that you could do both, or that you could choose? Okay, so for those of you that have maybe a particular style of yoga that you've studied with and you've been trained to do one or the other, if you found this video helpful, take a moment to share it with your friends. And if you want more videos like this delivered right into your inbox, then take a moment to jump on over to my website at nickdanu.com and sign up for my email list. Thanks so much. Namaste.